Nell was the oldest of their 3 daughters and one of Paul Newman's 6 children.
My dad loved to fish, and my mom loved to garden, so it really immersed me.
Paul Newman had the perfect life, or so everyone thought. But behind the cameras and red carpets, the Newman family was living a lie that would destroy them from the inside out. For decades, nobody dared to speak the truth about what really went on in the Newman household. Then, at 63, Nell Newman finally broke her silence. What she revealed in a shocking CBS interview would change everything America believed about their beloved movie star. What rumors about Paul Newman did his daughter confirm? Join us as we uncover the devastating secrets that destroyed one of America's most beloved families. Newman's double life. The Newman estate in Westport, Connecticut looked like the perfect wealthy family home from the outside, but it was built on secrets that stayed hidden for years. Nell Newman, the blonde daughter who liked to write quietly under their big oak tree, learned early that asking certain questions in their house was dangerous and could cost her the only love she knew. The family photos on their walls showed happy moments, but Nell figured out that photos lie just as much as the people in them do. When Nell Newman turned 63, she finally spoke up about secrets her family had kept for decades during an interview with CBS Sunday Morning. What she said completely destroyed the public image of her famous father, Paul Newman, the movie star with the blue eyes that made him a Hollywood legend. Everyone thought he was the perfect family man, but Nell revealed he was living 2 different lives, one where he charmed the public and another where his heart actually belonged to someone else entirely. When Nell was growing up, she never saw her parents actually being affectionate with each other. They didn't even hold hands like normal couples do. The few times she saw them hug or touch, it was only when cameras were around, and it lasted just a few seconds, like tired actors getting through a scene they didn't want to perform anymore. Paul Newman might have made millions of women swoon with his famous blue eyes, but at home, he was cold and distant, leaving his family to deal with the emotional emptiness he created.
Look, if we'd been in business during the California gold rush, where would we have gone? California, right?
By being so absent and disconnected. The worst part came when Newman's will was read. It was so cold it basically wiped out his family's claim to anything while leaving his entire fortune to someone known only by the letters RR. This move raised serious questions about Newman's secret relationships and whoever this person was that apparently mattered more to him than his wife and kids. Who RR was and why Newman would dump his family to protect this hidden relationship would eventually come out, showing the public that everything they thought they knew about their favorite movie star was wrong. But while Paul was busy protecting his secrets, he was destroying the woman who had stood by him for decades. If Joanne knew about his hidden life, how did she survive knowing the truth? Mother's heartbreaking silent truth. Joanne Woodward was beautiful and graceful, and everyone loved being around her. But whenever Paul Newman came home, she would completely shut down and become eerily quiet and distant. Nell clearly remembered how her mother would pull away from simple affection, like when Nell tried to hold her hand while she was doing dishes, as if being touched hurt her. When Nell asked if her mother was sad, Joanne would just withdraw even more, not because she was angry, but because she had forgotten how to show or accept love, building such high walls around herself that even her own daughter couldn't get through to her. The Newman house basically ran on, keeping people apart and staying quiet about everything. Paul had this routine where he'd take off every morning before anyone else was awake, not saying where he was headed. Then he'd show up again days or sometimes weeks later, give this half-hearted smile, and go straight to his study to shut the door. Nell could hear him on these long phone calls, laughing and talking, but she knew it wasn't her mom on the other end. But then something happened in the winter of 1972 that changed everything for Nell. She walked into her mother's bedroom and found Joanne sitting on the floor with a broken wine glass in her hands.
I've been keeping track of the amount of liquor that you consume. I've checked it with Dr. Greenspun.
Just repeating the same thing over and over, that Paul had lied to her again. When Joanne looked up at her daughter, her lips were shaking, and she said something that hit her like a truck. Not every man loves women, but Hollywood would never let people know that. That moment basically ended Nell's childhood right there. Everything she thought she knew about her family just crumbled. Then Nell found something that changed everything. An old Polaroid photo dropped out of her dad's wallet one day. The picture showed Paul Newman with his arm around some guy, and it wasn't just a buddy photo. The look in his eyes said it all. When Nell brought the photo to her mom, Joanne's reaction was instant. She grabbed it, tore it into pieces, and tossed it straight into the fireplace. This photograph was off limits forever. The fake family image was most obvious when they had guests over. When people like Gore Vidal, Robert Redford, and mysterious visitors from New York came to the house, Paul would dress up perfectly and wear cologne he never wore otherwise, and these nights always ended with his bedroom door locking. Nobody asked who he was entertaining in there, just like nobody talked about why Joanne would leave these parties early, like she'd been crying, leaving behind a house full of Oscar awards that showed success, but said nothing about happiness or real love. While the adults played their roles and kept quiet, one person in the house was starting to ask the questions nobody wanted to hear. What happens when the child who's supposed to carry on the family name refuses to stay silent? The dangerous question. Being Paul Newman's oldest son came with a lot of pressure. The entire country had their eyes on Scott, waiting to see if he'd live up to his dad's reputation. Everyone expected him to be just as talented, successful, and charming as the Hollywood legend himself. But Scott started noticing weird stuff at home during high school. His parents never held hands, not once. When his mom would cry, his dad would just turn away instead of comforting her. And whenever Scott tried to show affection or tell his father he loved him, Paul would just give him this dismissive smirk and brush him off. The thing that really got to Scott was seeing his dad with other men. These were not just casual friendships. Anyone could tell there was something more going on. As Scott got older, he couldn't ignore what was right in front of him. The pattern was too obvious to miss. Then everything fell apart in 1974. A drunk kid made a nasty comment.
Well, I put him in the backyard where all good pledges belong.
Well, good. Then why don't you show the real pledge master? Come on.
Telling Scott he should ask his dad if he preferred men or women before trying to become an actor like him. Scott snapped, and years of built-up anger and pain exploded, and he beat the kid so badly that the boy needed 6 stitches. Scott got kicked out of school within a week. Scott had one question his whole life. Did his father ever live as his real self? And what did that mean for Scott's own identity as Paul's son? The thing is, Scott didn't pass away from drugs or anything like that. He passed away because nobody in his family had the guts to tell him the truth he needed to hear. He just got crushed under all these family secrets that nobody was allowed to talk about. After Scott was gone, Nell started putting the pieces together. Their whole family, everything about it, was built on lies, stacked on top of more lies. These weren't just little white lies either. These were the kind of secrets that poisoned everything in their house for decades. The whole foundation of their family was so messed up that it destroyed Scott's spirit. He couldn't take living with all the lies anymore. Nell figured out that her dad's big reputation and their perfect family act were just a pile after pile of secrets nobody was allowed to talk about. Those secrets didn't just mess with Paul. They ended up destroying his kid.
In your house before doesn't mean I can't date somebody else. I mean, before you went out with Roger.
Fast forward to a cold winter night in 1981. Nell was 22 and just walking down the hall to grab a blanket from the kitchen when she stopped dead outside her dad's study. There was this yellow light coming through the cracked door, but what really caught her attention was this sound, a deep sigh from inside. It wasn't the kind of sigh an actor makes when going over lines or the tired sound someone makes after a long phone call. This was different. This was the sound of someone whose secrets were ready to explode. That made Nell creep up to the door and peek through the gap. What she saw changed everything she thought she knew about her family. Paul Newman was sitting alone at his desk, holding a fountain pen tight and writing on a huge stack of papers. He was not writing a movie script or business stuff. It was a personal letter written in the same handwriting Nell had only seen on Christmas cards to her mom. But this 3-page letter wasn't for Joanne at all. It started with, "Dear Red, the one who reminds me that I am still human, not merely a symbol." Nell just froze when she read that because everything suddenly clicked. All those weird childhood questions finally had answers. The letter didn't talk about movies or fame or any of that Hollywood stuff. Instead, Paul was writing about Robert Redford's eyes during their final scene when they filmed Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid out in the Utah desert. He wrote about times when Redford's hand would brush against his shoulder when nobody was watching. He talked about nights when they'd sit on hotel rooftops drinking whiskey without saying a word because actually talking would make their feelings too real to ignore. But Robert Redford wasn't the only man in Paul's secret world. Another relationship was about to surface that would shock Nell even more. Who else was Paul hiding from his family? Gore Vidal's hotel secret. When reporters asked Joanne Woodward about Robert Redford, she would only say, "That man," two cold words that refused to use his name or admit any emotional ties to him. Around this time, Nell was studying ecology and slowly realizing her parents' marriage wasn't real love. It was more like a 50-year acting job where two actors stuck to their roles to keep their fake life from falling apart. But one letter, one anonymous phone call, and one hotel room finally cracked open the lies that had always been there under their perfect-looking marriage, forcing everyone to face truths that had been hidden for decades. After finding that letter, Nell started paying closer attention to things she'd missed before. She found an old drawer in her father's study full of phone number lists with just single letters like R or T. No last names. Some numbers were crossed out. Others had notes saying to call back after 10 p.m. without telling Joanne. She also found old photos folded up and hidden behind family pictures. These showed strangers looking at her father with way too much love in their eyes. Definitely more than friendship. Just when Nell thought she understood her father's secret life, she realized Robert Redford might have been the most important guy. But he wasn't the only man her father had feelings for over the years. The truth hit hard in 1981 when Nell was in the lobby of the Carlisle Hotel in New York. She was just there to drop off some papers for her mom after a job interview at a TV station. When the elevator opened, she saw something that made her world stop. Her father, Paul Newman, walked out with Gore Vidal, the famous writer who had been a family friend for over 20 years. But that night, Gore wasn't acting like a regular friend. He was touching Paul's wrist in a tender way, letting his hand linger there before pulling back, while Paul smiled. They were acting like lovers, not friends. Both men wore long coats and walked so close together that a light breeze could have made their faces touch. The romantic tension was obvious. No amount of being careful in public could hide it. When Paul saw his daughter standing there, he gave her a look she'd never forget. It was not the look of a father caught doing something wrong. It was more like he was silently begging her not to say anything about what she'd just seen, asking her to keep quiet like their family always had. Gore smiled at Nell like nothing weird had happened. Paul got straight into the elevator. After the doors closed, Nell just stood there, frozen, now carrying another family secret. She knew Gore Vidal wasn't going away. He would keep being part of her father's hidden life. The Newman family story shows how keeping secrets can destroy everyone involved.
Make it?
I don't know. He was laying in bed up there. Looked just like Rita Hayworth.
Paul Newman spent his whole life hiding who he really was, and it didn't just hurt him. It destroyed his son Scott and broke his wife Joanne's spirit. Nell had to live with all these family lies until she was 63 years old before she could finally tell the truth. The saddest part is that Scott passed, never getting the answers he needed, crushed by secrets that nobody would talk about. This story makes people think about what happens when someone famous has to choose between being honest and protecting their career. Back in Paul Newman's time, being gay could end everything for a Hollywood star. But the price of staying in the closet was huge. It destroyed his family from the inside out. Maybe if Paul had been brave enough to live as his real self, Scott would still be alive, and their family wouldn't have fallen apart. What do you think about Paul Newman's secret relationships and how they affected his family? Do you believe famous people have the right to hide their true selves to protect their careers? Or should they be honest with their families no matter what? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen.